All right, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out of a nice summer evening in an unair-conditioned room to come in and sit and listen to us. But I do want to thank you for coming. A few people I do want to introduce, and I want to thank WCAT for filming this so we can people can review it at home, and this will be on their, is it live or is it going to be, oh, we're live, okay, and then you can see it on their streaming, which is great. Few people that I do want to introduce, checking people in is Paul Revis, our town planner, in the back. One of our town councilors, Tony Longo, up front. Director of DPW, Rick Stinson. Wow, a little delay on that one, huh? Chris Pierce, our Director of Supervisor for Buildings and Grounds. Thank you. And my name is Steve Mayo, very proud to be your town administrator, and I did attend the Hurd School for 6 years. And for those of you doing the math, in those days it was 1st through 6th grade in the elementary schools in Wakefield. So it wasn't that I was there any longer than I needed to be. But there were 6 very happy years in my life, and going through today, I can still remember, and I know a lot of you did this, the teachers that we had in each room. So this, no matter what the community decides for this building, either way it's bittersweet for me. Those were the days when you walked to school in the morning, you walked home for lunch, except in the winter. You walked to school again after lunch, and then back at home. So I think everybody walked. I don't think anybody was driven. I don't think there were any buses either. So before we do begin and talk about some of the things, how many people either went to Hurd School here, or their parents or their children or brothers and sisters went here? So I see the vast majority of the room. That's nice. How did you hear about this meeting today? How many people heard about it via flyer, door-to-door flyer? I would say that's, you making a mental note of these numbers? Good. How many people heard about it via the Wakefield Daily Item ran a story on it? Okay. How many people saw it on the town's website or through Facebook? Okay, so I guess still door-to-door is the most effective way. So thank you for the guys and gals that went out and delivered them. Any event, a little history about the Hurd School. Someone asked me this question today, and I had to look it up. The corner brick building, the main building over here, and this was built around 1899. So this building has been here for a while. John DeTono remembers when they put in the foundation, I think. It replaced a wood frame building that was here, that was built in 1850, that was named after Dr. Francis P. Hurd. And the auditorium and 4 additional classrooms were added in the 1920s. So this is a grand old function of Wakefield. The lot, people asked on the lot size, how big the lot is here. It's about 45,500 square feet, so it wasn't on a huge lot. And we have about 22,000 square feet of space in this building in the 3 floors. You have a 2nd floor, 1st floor, and you do have a basement. So that's a little bit about this. The school department declared this property surplus in 2005. After that, we had Nazareth Academy in here for a while, and they've been out for a couple years because they moved on and had to combine with another school, because basically an all-girls Catholic school, they just couldn't get the numbers. They loved it here. I think they would have stayed. And from what I heard, they were pretty good to the neighborhood. The neighborhood didn't have a lot of problems with them, so I see some neighbors here. So in any event, when we came here a while ago, I did promise that we would come back and discuss what we had talked about. And since then, a few things have coalesced and come a little bit clearer to us in what we are talking about. So I want to talk about some of the potential reuse options that were mentioned at that meeting in September, and if there are any extras, any more any new ideas, we'll put them on there. And go into 2 categories: property to stay town-owned and property to be sold privately. So talk about remaining in the town. Retain as a public school, possibly a preschool. an arts community center, artist studios, that could be public or privately owned, I guess. Adult education center, DPW storage, special needs rec center, senior housing, which again I think could be owned by the town or privately, historical society museum, and someone said swap with Little Red Schoolhouse, swing space when other facilities need updating, incubator space for startup businesses. Those were some of the options that were mentioned last, when we met in September. Some of the other comments from the town, from the people at the town were private ownership would be better maintained. Town would shed the cost to maintain the building, be done privately. Would increase annual tax revenues. It could be a private school, could be sold to them. Private condominiums, example, someone said the North School in Stoneham is beautifully maintained. And affordable housing. Those were the options that were mentioned last year. We wrote them all down. We reviewed I had things all over the board and what have you. Anything new from there?
You asking for new suggestions?
Yes, yes. If you would come to the microphone, please. This gentleman had his hand up first, and then Charlie.
Steve Cox, 42 years here in Wakefield. Did we discuss anything about tearing the building down
Not yet. We haven't
Okay.
discussed that at all.
and put a couple of, the square footage you gave us, will we have room to put a couple of homes in so we get some tax revenue? Things like
It's a
that.
46,000, let's call it 46,000 square foot lot.
Right.
I would say that if that were the route the community wanted to go, it could be torn down, obviously. Probably would fit 3 house lots, I think, probably.
Yeah. So
Maybe 4, 3 or 4 house
Maybe
lots.
get an estimate from a contractor,
Yeah.
because I don't see how an engineer or the building inspector can I know last time you mentioned we got water in the cellar, we got mold in the cellar, the foundation's sagging. So I don't think that's a healthy thing to have someone actually rent it. So
Yeah, the water in the cellar can certainly be corrected.
what about the foundation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
That's
think,
cracking the ceiling.
I personally don't think rental's an option. But we
Yeah.
would have to take care of that, obviously.
Yeah, and it'd have to be the right people, because, you know, we have a lot of young families with 2, 3, 4 kids, and you got the fire engines parked out here, and it's obstruction, you know, the joggers,
Yeah.
the walkers, and, you know, I know it's hard to find buildings for them to train in and so forth, but it really, really something we should
Yeah.
look at.
That is hopefully few and far between, but I do know they do a little bit of,
Thank you.
but I get it. Thank you, sir. Charlie?
Charlie McCauley, 32 Lawrence Street. And unlike the previous gentleman, I can almost double his years here in town. I have a few questions before any type of suggestion. One, is there any known structural defects in this building?
Known structural defects? Not known? No.
All
I'm
right,
hearing no.
I
I mean, it's things that need to be repaired,
I
obviously.
assume there
Yeah.
are a lot of code.
Code
Objections.
code is a whole different issue,
That's a
depending on
whole
what you're going to use it
different
for.
issue,
Yeah.
If there are no structural defects, the town has recently indicated that they have a lack of space at our police station. They want to build an addition on the front of it. They want to spend $8 million there to bring it up to the police chief's standards. I am asking this as a form of a question. Was it ever in anybody's mind to renovate this building and make it a police station with more than sufficient room to house their needs, house all their equipment, backyard here for parking facilities? And I have heard some people I've talked to say, well, it's not the center of town, you know, but what is it, a half a mile off the center of town at the most? Many towns have police stations that are split. They have certain functions that are in one location and other functions in a different location. I am sure that the DPW could find use for some of this space. I'm sure the fire department could find use for some of this space, and definitely the police department could use it. The downstairs room under this area here would make an excellent storage area for their firearms, ammunition, and records that they are complaining they have a problem with at the present station. Whether it would fit in the same kind of cost structure as renovating the police station, I don't know. But I am offering that as a potential, even though we're having a town meeting, a town election to resolve that
Tuesday,
other
yeah.
issue.
I will tell you that having been through the period of when the police were temporarily at Montrose School, okay, that was in a neighborhood, and there was some issues with being in the neighborhood, because of the nature of what the police have to do. It would take a lot of money to renovate this, huge amount of money. Was it looked at? It was considered, yes. Was it completely studied and feasibility like we did for that building? No, I think it was looked at and decided that that would be an issue. As far as DPW is concerned, they always have places they can store things, but I think we're pretty good right now.
No, we do have we do have a storage issue, and it's two different types. For the stuff that we use in the field, we couldn't store that stuff in here, nor can we store the supplies and all that. We do have a storage issue when, in terms of some desks and other stuff that could go in here, but the entrances and exits would have to be substantially modified to even accommodate that stuff. It would not be an inexpensive cost to do that.
Okay, I get that.
Hi, my name is Susan Bernstein. I live at 140 Pleasant, which is directly across from the schoolyard. For 41 years, I've seen a lot of things go on here. And I understand that this is zoned as a single-family residential area, and I would love to see it stay that way. I know the idea of raising the building and building lots for new houses is probably a very expensive project for a developer, but that would be my ideal. I think a police station, it's just too close a neighborhood to have that kind of activity going on. At least at the Montrose, it was kind of isolated behind.
Was a
the
little
street.
farther back, but
Yeah.
and there were still issues.
Yeah, but I just think this is a beautiful little neighborhood near the lake. I don't think it's a place to conduct business, whether it's police, the fire training. It's a little annoying, but we understand that needs to be done. But it's also right now kind of an attractive nuisance. People hang out, they leave trash. I know the DPW has somebody who comes regularly and takes care of the property, but my ideal, and I think maybe a few of the other neighbors who live so close to the building, would hope that maybe there's a developer who feels it could be worth his while to, or her while, to build some homes, similarly to what's here now.
So if I understand you, you agree with the gentleman, lots and homes?
Car, yes.
Okay, and get rid of the building?
That would be my,
Okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I just wanted to make sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayo.
Hi, how are you? Steve, please.
Susie Bayer, 15 Aborn Ave. So I'd love to hear you talk about just space in general for the whole town. I know the school gave this up in 2005, or the school committee, but it certainly feels like we may have some issues around schools coming our way. Actually, I'd argue that we have them now with the redistricting that's taking place. And the idea of using this space as swing space so that we could move things around feels like something we should be considering. I'm hearing storage issues at the police station, DPW, library just put something in about needing space to hold their books for their annual book sale. storage is an issue for town, and I think town-owned land to do anything with is a problem, and just it's sparse, right? We don't have a lot of it. So I think it's really hard to have a conversation about what to do with this particular space without having a conversation about what's going on overall in town. And I have to believe somebody's thinking about that bigger strategic picture that would make it a little bit easier to understand how this fits into that puzzle. So I'd be interested to hear just your point of view from a bigger perspective.
I'll try to tackle the school question first.
Sure.
School space. When we were here before, there was a concern that this would be used for swing space for the Walton School project. Okay, that project was designed and is actually being built, was built and continuing to be built with the students there. So that wasn't needed in quotations. I don't think if we were to use this for school, for any educational purpose, the town were, okay, or anybody, there'd be huge code issues, we have handicapped issues, there'd be a lot of money spent to do that. That being said, I think that with the Doyle School, with the renovations to the Walton, could things change? Absolutely. But I think, I shouldn't say this, I have had no indication from the schools that they have a space need that they can't handle within their current areas. Now, high school is a different answer, okay?
Totally.
Different
Not
animal, I'm
even
not
putting
thinking
that out
about that one. But again, to bring this up to code for children would be a huge expense and probably not worth it.
Do you have any idea what that looks like?
For code compliance,
Are we talking 2? Are we talking 5 million? Like,
I'd say 3.
My guess is you're talking, because there's not, because when you get into it, you'd end up doing HVAC stuff.
Right.
You
Yeah.
do everything there is with it. So you're probably well over $10 to $15 million to do that, because you have to meet all of the current code requirements. You can't skip any of them if you went back to use this. So you'd be into elevators, you'd be into asbestos that's in the building, which could be a huge number. HVAC would be a huge number. So all of those things, that's not even talking about just the general kind of repairs and making things work. And so there'd be a whole host of things that would have to be done. Handicap ramps on the outside, the one that's there is not going to do it. So there'd be a lot of things. And then you'd get into parking requirements, which would have to meet zoning requirements. That would be another issue. That may not even be possible to do that today with what the zoning requirements are.
the reality is, though, there isn't a lot of town-owned space to build on, right? So I hear that you're saying that the school committee is saying that they're okay on space.
I think what I said is they haven't
asked you.
They haven't asked me yet.
Right.
I don't
Okay,
want to
that's fair.
misrepresent.
Yep, that's fair. I mean, at the last
Yeah.
school committee meeting, they were talking about redistricting. They, you
Yeah.
know, we're only set up to have 12 classes per grade, 4 in the 2 big schools, 2 in each of the small schools. Create, you know, there's development going on in town. It's hard for me to believe that we have enough space in those schools based on the way they talk about how they want them to work, 4 grades per. But I totally get that this building may not be the answer. I just worry about town-owned space that allows us to build the things that we need. And if it's going to cost millions of dollars to renovate it, do we at least hold on to the space to figure out, is there something else you build on this piece of land because it's going to cost too much money to renovate it, versus selling it, and especially selling it to developers that are going to build, you know, potentially 20 units on it.
One thing
which
that
nobody
is
wants.
difficult in this space, it's only 46,000 square feet.
Yeah,
It's a small lot.
yeah. Okay.
So anything that we, for municipal purpose, I know the director mentioned parking,
Yeah.
to have a building and parking under the current guidelines would be very difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McBain, and then, actually, I think, Jim, this gentleman had his hand up before you, so. We'll make the closest abutter wait.
My name is Stephen Thistle. I live at 40, Stephen Thistle.
Thank you.
46 Brewster Road, Stones
Yep.
Throw from the school here. I moved to Wakefield in 1990. At that time, my daughter was a year old. I expected that she would attend the Hurd school. She never had the benefit, neither one of my daughters had the benefit of the Hurd school. Actually, they did for 1 year when the Dolby was being rebuilt. Other than that, for the 28 years, my family has not benefited from this building at all. I disagree with any, there's proposals for police station, DPW yard, so on and so forth. I agree that this is a residential neighborhood. It should remain that way. I don't see how this building could be cost-effectively renovated for public use as far as educational use or any other. I look at it as more of economies of scale. This is a very small lot, as you said, small building. It's much more costly to maintain small facilities than it is to maintain larger facilities. One large building opposed to 3 small, for example. I would like to see this building sold and either made into condominiums if it's possible, or raised in residential housing.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
How many condos could we put here? How many townhomes could we put?
11 or 12 condos.
How many townhomes, same thing?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I think Mr. McBain was next, but that's okay. It's up to him.
What do you think?
Okay, Jim, Mr. McBain is next.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Jim McBain, no, actually.
No,
Bob McLaughlin, 376 Water Street.
you're lucky the moderator was in here. We would have thrown you right
There you
out.
go. Guys, when I was on the planning board 100 years ago, I was chair of the master plan at the time. And one of the plans that we were involved with right out of the gate for our master plan was the preservation plan. And it's so difficult for me to see these buildings in town, one after another, being taken down for one reason or another. Because we're not handing off, or the future generations aren't going to have the history that we grew up with in this town. I've only been here 30, 35 years. But it seems a shame that we don't look into, preserving a little bit of this town, maybe 1 school building, 2 school buildings, a house over here, before we tore it all down and we lose it, and we'll be like the Southwest. It's just a generic town. This is what makes the town, is the history, the memories of the people that went to this school. I think there's a lot of things that we could do. One of the things I'd like to do is just explain to everybody about a swing building. I do a lot of work in Brookline, and in Brookline, I know when they were doing their town hall over, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, they used one of the swing buildings, one of the schools, and they moved everybody from the town hall into that swing building. We could have a catastrophic fire in one of the buildings. I don't have a crystal ball, but it did happen to the Atwell building. Right, and you're going to need a place almost immediately to shift gears. It could be the town hall, it could be one of the schools. I know there's code issues, but renting buildings, modular buildings, is also pretty pricey when you look at the big picture. So, I'm not encouraging anybody to. I'm not making up anybody's mind. My feeling is that we keep the building intact. Keep it for a swing building, rent it out on I'm not exactly sure, tenant at will, something like that. Something like the NAS that was in here. And I don't think there was a lot of code, the NAS was in here for a couple of years. I don't think we did a lot of code, changes for those guys, but I could be wrong. But I would really look back, take a look at the preservation plan and see what we've lost in Wakefield. I'd hate to see this thing go down the drains.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Did you, the Franklin School we maintained?
Correct.
Kept it?
Yeah, the Franklin School, if that, and of course, we kept the school, we condos in it, but it's still, the history of the school is still there. My kids went to the Franklin School, they can drive by, it's still there. But I would really prefer, if we just look at all the different options, there was a lot of great options for the school. I wouldn't do anything, I wouldn't tear it down right away, I certainly wouldn't.
Can I, Jim, if you come up, someone
Go ahead.
jumps in front of you.
Sorry for jumping in.
If I can take a very unscientific, non-binding poll, how many people would like the building to remain? Now, that's a loaded question. What's going to go in it? Who knows? How many people would like it torn down? Okay, so if it were to remain for housing, how many people would like it to remain for housing? Well, I know. Well, I'm trying to drill down on that one. Okay.
Steve, maybe
Okay. Yeah. Let Mr. McBain speak. Okay. I'm killing him. Okay.
maybe I can help
I've been
you.
told to shut up. That's good.
Maybe I can help you here, all right? I live there, next door.
Yeah.
I'm the closest neighbor to this place, all right? We've been there 37 years, 40 years, whatever the heck it is, all right? So my concern is that there's a fire in here. That would take my house immediately. As an architect, retired, I've been through reconstruction buildings that have been under fire. I've renovated many buildings. I've done many new buildings. In this town, we have done both. We've taken a building down and put a huge development in. We've also taken a building and converted it to housing, all right? So for me, for my wife, it's all about the safety of this building and the use of this building so I don't lose my home, all right? Now, that could be satisfied two ways in my mind. One is, and I disagree, maybe 4 lots, I think it's more like 3 lots. You could have 3 housing lots here, and it would be like the rest of the neighborhood, all right? A little more modern, maybe a little bit bigger, McMansion furniture in it, whatever, all right? But I don't think a developer, quite frankly, would be able to afford to buy this, demolish this, take everything away, and whatever they find on the way, be it asbestos or oil leaks from the furnace or something like that, and they look at that and they say, it's not worth it, all right? So to me, because this has been in the neighborhood, and I would disagree with you, I have a photograph of my house with a barn sitting here. Not a school, a barn, all right? So 1850, there was a wood building. Kind of doubt it unless it was way over there.
I think it was way over there.
Way over there after the house and the barn. But anyways,
I was given fake news, but thank you for
I'll
pointing
send it
that
to
out.
you sometime, all right? So anyway, so I see this building as a condominium. Because one, first off, we're all used to this building existing. Nobody that lives in this neighborhood was here when this place was built, even the additions. All right, if they are, they were over 100, all right? And they ought to be having a real birthday party right about now. On the other hand, all right, I think everybody would like to see this. A lot of people would accept it staying as it is. We also would want people that live in here that would maintain it. If it was turned into apartments, you're depending on the people who come and go all the time, don't care about basically the neighborhood, some of them anyways, all right? And a landlord, who the hell knows what he's gonna do, basically keep the place up. If it's a condominium, then great, you know? The people are invested in the neighborhood and are part of the neighborhood. And you get the building to stay where it is. Now, I've looked at this. I've spent some time planning this out. You actually can get 11 units in here. 11, all right? That includes 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms and handicap units in this mix. There would be substantial in size to some degree because guess what? This building isn't laid out for just to fit any old apartment unit or any old condominium unit. It's got more space than you would actually use in a condominium if you're going to build it from scratch. They'd be smaller units. So you got to fit us all the nooks and crannies basically, and they end up with space inside. For instance, this room would be combined with the room below to be a duplex. So your bedrooms would be down below, and your living room would be up, and your kitchens would be up here. Now, what would happen, because the windows down there are up about here, you have to raise the floor. So when you talk about leaks and water and everything else in the basement, guess what? The floor would be up here. And the leaks in the basement and like actually are because they've got drywells spotted outside the foundation. And all that drywall water comes in here and into my house at times. So I know about why the leaks exist here. And it's not from the roof, it's from the drywalls off the gutters. But for this level, for instance, because the windows are so high, what you'd have is actually you'd enter on this side and walk through your space, and you'd be like a living room up there raised. So the windows would be a little bit lower. Then up here, they'd be more like that. But in the end, you can get 11 units in here. you can easily get 22 parking spaces out back, 5 of which would be for guest parking. The rest of them would be 1.5 park, which is required by code, 1.5. You could actually get a little bit more out there if you wanted to, but the rest of it should be turned into greenery. Get all that asphalt out, turn it into greenery, put some trees around the edges basically, so that the neighbors have some separation from the buildings. There could even be a gazebo, a little fire pit or something like that out back as part of the condominium complex and the like, and that sort of stuff can happen here. And in the end, I assume, because this would end up going to planning board, is this group, or a group of neighbors basically get together and actually work through the planning board to actually set restrictions as to what they want to see in here. For instance, that stairway and that stairway over there could remain as it is, without all the steel work that's put up there for a handicap ramp, and the link in between here can actually become a courtyard where you enter and the elevator and the like would be in that link between the two buildings and access all levels. It would be a place where you could have your mail delivered, so there'd be mailboxes there, there'd be an elevator there, there'd be a sitting space, and then that's the transition space between the front yard and the rear yard, which will be where your parking is. It can all be planned out that way. And it would be with people basically that want to live in a neighborhood, be near the lake, and would basically be people that have the same value as the rest of us in the neighborhood about property and taking care of the place, picking up the litter or putting the trash out or whatever the heck it is, basically. So there's a great opportunity to save the structure, to replace the windows with any efficient windows, to do whatever work basically necessary to repair the outside of the building. And I've walked around the building. It is in pretty good shape. There aren't, usually when I see buildings like this, there's lots of cracks in the brick, because the bricks can really tell you a big story. And you don't see that in here. They do have a water problem. The water problem can be solved. The upper levels from the top floor basically end up to be flats, which means one story. But spaces like this that have a basement, in order to grab the basement space to make it work, you'd walk into your unit and you walk down a set of stairs, and at that lower level basically would be where your bedrooms are. But the floor would be raised so you can actually see out the window. And in those cases where this courtyard exists, you can actually have walls with plants in them that are just outside your window. So if you've got a bedroom, you might see people coming and going, but what you have is plants along either side in this planter system that's all part of that. And the walkway then can go over to Pleasant and go out to Cordis. So you have 2 ways of access. So you can see I've thought about this a little bit and what could happen in this building and keeping it the way it is. And at the same time have a fire alarm system, have a sprinkler system and all this. So bringing this up to put storage in it or other sorts of things to save the building, to me is just another fire hazard. I'd rather see someone living in here that actually is here full time, just like it was a school where you had living people in here for a period of time. This time, there'd be living people in here full time, basically, that's where I'm come from. And I live next door. Thank you.
Jim, can I ask you a couple questions? I want to make sure that I understand you right. 11 units in the existing building.
Well,
11 units in the existing building.
11 units in this whole structure.
Existing structure, no addition.
No, I would not want any
Okay, I just want to make
additions.
sure that I understand what you're
I
saying.
actually have generated a sort of thing. So I would say no additions to this building, all right? No parking structures out back, because I'd want as much greenery as possible, basically, and I wouldn't want to increase the massing around this building. I'd want it to look just like it hasn't been touched, so to speak. As I mentioned, basically about 17 parking spaces for the people that live here, another 5 for guest parking. There's actually enough room to do a little bit more than that. You don't have to pit people out on the street, which is, what happened when this was a school. The teachers all parked on the street, so the kids had the backyard. This would change considerably. Some trees around the edges, basically, to buffer, particularly along these tight edges. I think that some sort of garden, gazebo, courtyard type of thing, basically out back that provides some services. Any mechanical that goes on the roof needs to be screened. There's only one roof actually you could take mechanical, and that's the back building. And for me, rolling trash containers basically can be rolled out to the curb. And I'm not talking about small cans, I'm talking about fairly good ones, but I don't want a truck going in there, beep, 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 pick up the thing, haul it, and then beep, beep, back. Keep the neighborhood quiet, basically. So that's sort of the things that I've been thinking about.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
If you have anything, Jim? You give me that.
John Kingsley with over on Flanders Lane here.
Hey, John, how are you?
Very, very good. Thanks for the neighbor. A lot of thought into that, and really interesting concept. I mean, I live here in the neighborhood. There's a lot of multi-unit dwellings that have been growing in town over the last 5 years. I have concern over that. To follow with what he's saying, or what my neighbor was just mentioning, how do we, if this were to go into condos, how do we limit the number of units that could be here?
Well, the process would be, and we're gathering information, the process would be is that it's a multi-level process, but the town council would actually go out for what's called a request for proposals. In that, the town council could limit any usage. We could say, to take what Jim said, 11 max, is that what you said? 11 units, no additions, no outdoor garages, so a developer coming in would know the rules when they bid on it, and that would be a restriction on what you could do with the property. So that could all be laid out. If that happened, and they went out to bid and got a bunch of developers come in and say, yes, we're gonna buy it, then that same package would have to go and get approved by town meeting. So you would know what you're approving, and it would be, it's being bought by Acme Builders, and there can be a maximum of 11 units, and that would all be restrictions on the use of it. No outdoor garages, no extensions, what have you.
And the community would have involvement in
You
that
would have
process.
involvement, absolutely, and have the vote. It would be a vote and the say.
Now, we talked about asbestos, we talked about infrastructure, we talked about different $10, $15 million to make this building ready for a school. Has any developer come and said, this building has what we're looking for, and we're willing to spend X amount of money to do that?
I will tell you, and then that maybe Rick has, I have had numerous developers and actually citizens say, I have interested in the building. Well, what are you doing with the building? I read something we're interested in. So yes, that doesn't guarantee anything. I don't know, maybe Rick has.
The one comment I had too, remember that the cost for a developer when he's doing a condo unit conversion, that's substantially different than a cost to renovate for a school, because there are requirements by the state and prevailing wage rates and a whole bunch of issues that the town and the school would have to deal with that would drive the cost up substantially. So it'd be a lot different than a private development.
Sure. Asbestos, obviously, could be a big challenge for it.
Well, that would be either way.
Anybody.
Either way, they'd have that.
Right.
And if we demolish the building, that's our problem as a town, to make sure it's demolished in a way that abates the asbestos during demolition.
We would want to make sure of that, yes, very, very much so.
So that's pretty
that it was
costly.
disposed of properly, even if that were part of the sale. Even if someone bought it and agreed, we're going to buy the building, we're going to demolish this, we're going to get rid of it. I will tell you, in today's litigious world, the town could still be someone that they could come back at. So yes, we would want to make sure, absolutely, no matter what.
So it's hard for
One
me.
asbestos brick, we have to make sure is taken care
I'm
of.
in a rock and a hard place, because I'd like to see it remain in the town's property if it had good usefulness and a good neighbor value. I don't really want to see a multi-unit structure in my neighborhood. And at the same time, I recognize it's going to be really difficult to have this developed as homes, as is in the neighborhood. And that would be my preference, but I can see just by that conversation that's an impossibility. It just doesn't make any economic sense. So I think
it is a challenge.
so if this goes down the road of a multi-unit, which is what my sense is, even though that's not my wish, I want to make sure that a lot of the things that Jim was saying
Right.
Really have to be part of a process that we're doing here
For
today.
instance, when The town did sell the Franklin School, okay, and the Montrose School for that matter. Franklin School, part of that process was no addition. So there are developers that came in and wanted to put an addition on that school to put even more condo units. That was no. So you came in, your bid was, this is it. You can't come back and say, well, can I add, a big addition and get 10 more units? No.
They got the parking structures though, right?
They did, but
Which-
that was for that, yes. For this, I would agree with Mr. McBain.
You would, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would,
Yeah,
and I
right.
think a lot of people
We'll
would.
have to see,
Yeah.
right, with the town.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, we'll get back to you, Charlie, don't worry.
Hi, Julie Scott, 226 Main Street. I went online and I found this from the Wakefield Historical Commission. I wasn't here at the meeting in September, so I didn't know if this fact was brought up. It's on the Wakefield list of historical significant sites. And it says here, as part of the town's effort to list properties on the National Register of Historic Places in the 1980s, close to 400 properties were recognized as architecturally, archaeologically, and historically significant. Research was done into these properties, and an inventory sheet was completed on them. This information can be seen in the local history room of the BB Library. I thought that was an important thing to mention. And for a number of years, I taught in Melrose, and when I stand in this room, it actually reminds me of Memorial Hall in Melrose, especially that. And I've gone there recently.
A much smaller room.
A much smaller, but it's a multi-purpose room. They put on plays. We used to bring our schools down. I love that stage. And right now, currently, in the wintertime, the Wakefield Farmers Market shares the space with the Melrose Farmers Market. So if this were to remain within the town's use, something like that on the weekends would be nice. And I love the stage. It's hard to get stages like that built. Thank you.
You didn't go here though, Julie, did you? No, you did. You weren't lucky. You're only one. Okay, that's right. Anybody else? Mr. McCauley?
Contrary to the statement I made earlier, which was only for one thing, to get the comments and discussions going, I was wondering why the town would want to sell the land that this building's on. Wakefield is running out of land. We do not have resources to build and expand town functional areas, except maybe a 7-acre lot down in Greenwood, way out in the back somewhere. But we sold off.
That's another battle.
We sold off the Montrose School, sold off the Franklin School, and now there's talk of maybe selling off this school or tearing it down and doing something else. I offer one thing: why not green space? Period. A small park, 46,000 square feet, just a shade over an acre of land. A small park would take and improve the area for the residents that are living here. I do not think a park of that size would take and bring in a large crowds, depending on what you put there. You're not going to put a soccer field in it. You're not going to put a baseball field in it. You might put a basketball net out there, but that's iffy. But a small park that the neighbors can enjoy. And the town maintains the property, keeps it in their control. It's money in the bank for the future. And if I believe in your financial statements, finances are really not a big problem for the town at the moment. I mean, the taxes keep going up and your coffers keep getting full.
I like to think of it as our coffers. but
I
that's
offer,
okay.
other than that facetious statement about the police, I offer as a real proposition, if the decision is to tear this building down, why not keep it and turn it into green space? I think the neighbors around here would be happy. I think. And it really would not cost the town that much to have the grass cut and keep a fence around it. And you did it for a dog park.
We did it for what?
You did it for a dog park.
Right. I think that the one thing that we would have to look into that would be the cost of the disposal of the site, and I think that could be quite substantial from some other things that we've been looking about the past few days. Anybody else for the first time? Mrs. Simpson? And then, right. Don't. Listen, it's the other way around completely.
It is,
We all
I
know
know,
that.
I know. Judy Simpson, we live down that way on Pleasant Street.
Judy, speak into the microphone.
What I just like whatever we decide to do with this place, for the traffic not to greatly increase. Pleasant Street is a cut-through in the morning for the vocational school. The kids go by about 45 miles an hour with things hanging out of the sides of their cars. And then the Doll Bear School kids are dropped off and the parents are going by. And in the afternoon, the kids coming home from the boat start up here and they coast down as fast as they can down the hill. It's a speedway, and nothing seems to have stopped it from getting faster and faster and faster. And the neighborhood has turned over as far as age, except for us. And there are a ton of little kids, 2, 1 months, almost born, not born yet, but it's just getting more little kids, and more little kids, and these cars are going way too fast already. So if we have something where every day there's like 22 more cars at a specific time, it's going to be really hazardous. And when Nazareth was here, the worst part of the day was a pickup because they were supposed to park only on one side at the top of the hill, but they parked on both because it was convenient. And going over the hill, either way, you can't see what's on the top till you get to the top, and it was really only one lane because it was too small. And then in the wintertime, if you add in plowing, forget it, it's barely one lane. So that's the traffic. Please just, yeah. And also, Keith Irons Memorial Tree is out there. Did you know that, Richard? That we need to keep that somewhere. It can't just be, okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Full disclosure, I got broadsided at Cordis and Pleasant a few years ago, so I understand the traffic point. I think you had your hand up, ma'am?
I'm new to the neighborhood. I've been here 3 years.
Could you say your name, please? I'm sorry.
Deb Trachtenberg. I live 2 doors away from the Simpsons. The traffic is horrible. At my count, we have 8 new children under the age of 5 at that end of Pleasant Street. And let me tell you, it is not fun trying to get out of your driveway. I'm semi-retired, I work, I have a dog. This week there have been 5 construction crews working with the pickup trucks. Try to get around a pickup truck to get to the corner. Or maybe there's a policeman directing traffic because they're digging the hole in the street for a reason. Pleasant Street is not a wide street. I've been here 3 years and I had no idea how busy Pleasant Street was, especially in the morning when they're booming down here to get to the Rotary, to get to the highway, or get down to the school to the Dole Bear. I can count the cars with the kids in them because they go down and then they come back with no kids. And I walk a lot. I have a dog, and it's a very friendly dog neighborhood. I almost got run over today by a motorcycle. There's a pickup truck parked at my neighbor's house. I cut out in front of my house. The motorcycle came up this way. It would have been 1 dead lady and 1 dead dog if I hadn't heard him. So when you've got construction or the dump trucks, the trash trucks, you're down to a very small area to get down the street. So that's what I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Emily Fitzgerald. I live in the yellow house right here, close to my neighbor, probably the next house closest. I've lived here for 12 years. I have probably 3 of those 8 new kids that you see. Traffic is a problem. 22 new cars sounds like a problem to me. 11 new units sounds like a problem to me. It's just too many in this neighborhood that's already experiencing a lot of children and traffic. I think it would make a huge difference to the quality of life that we're living now. I love the park idea. I'm sure that's not going to happen, but
Well, people might drive to the park too, so they can get the cars.
I wouldn't have to drive to the park.
Sorry.
I think selling it would be maybe a little short-sighted because we could use this building for all of the growing that the town is doing. So just hope we think really hard about it and keep it in the town for our use. Thanks.
Thank you. What time do you have? What time do you have?
Amy Wall.
You cut right in front of this
did
guy.
I?
Amy. No, you didn't. That's
Sorry.
okay.
Okay, I have a cute baby, it's fine. At the end of the day, Steve, who's going to make the decision of what happens to the building? Is that the town council?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a town meeting vote.
But it's not going to be a town meeting multiple choice. It's going to say vote for it to be
No,
this or not.
the goal would be to bring a plan forward, whatever that plan is.
Okay, and who's going to have say in that vote?
That'll be the town council's
Town
vote.
council.
Then we'll go to
Okay.
the town meeting.
Okay, and if it were to, just thinking long-term, they decided they wanted it to be condos, is that going to have to then go in front of
Then
the planning?
that would go to the Board of Appeals.
Okay.
But whoever buys whoever the developer is would be limited by the restrictions placed on their purchase.
Okay, does it have to go through planning as well to have zoning change?
I think just Board of Appeals is, Mr. Revis here? My sense is just the Board of Appeals.
You wouldn't need,
For condos, in this building.
there would need to be an overlay change?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I'm not sure, but I'll have him check, I'll ask him, I don't know where he went.
okay, thank you.
Hey, I'm Julio Herrera. I live in 23 BB Lane. I'm a newbie. I've only lived here about 6 years.
Well,
and by the
welcome.
way, Mr. Architect, if you ever want to sell your house, let me know. But I mean, I grew up in Florida, and one of the things that my wife and I love about this area is the history. And this is a gorgeous building, and I would hate to see it torn down because it really does have a lot of character and it adds a lot to the neighborhood. So I just kind of wanted to put my 2 cents in worth behind this gentleman here. I mean, the history in this area is what makes it so appealing, and I think it would be great to try to keep it.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Thank you very much. I like to keep these meetings at an hour, so people have things to do. We're about an hour if you came for the tour. Anybody else? I mean, I'll certainly remain. If people, some people don't like to come to the microphone, we'll certainly remain to talk to you. So, but, one more? Okay.
I won't keep you long.
How are you, sir? Good.
John Gregorio, 88 Main Street. I was a 30-year resident, moved away to dreadful Melrose and came back 4 years ago.
It was a big mistake.
It was. I love my town. I came in a little late. Did we talk about numbers, what it cost to maintain this building today?
Currently, because the building was leased, we had limited costs. That limited cost included structural repairs, and we tried not to do a lot with that. Today, with the building back under the town, we're basically heating and clearing snow and mowing the lawn. We're not doing a lot of maintenance to this building because there's nobody in here. That would be a substantially different story if this was under the town and was an active building.
My point was, if we're not spending a lot of money, do we have time to consider potential uses as it is as a structure now, whether it's rented to another school, whether it's rented to a private company to come in and do small office spaces, I understand the code issues. It's, you know, it's a lot of money, but it's not something the town needs to consider right now. If we have low maintenance, none, what you just said, cut the grass, plow the snow, and we can manage that. And have we not looked at the potential for some tenants that are low energy, not offensive to the neighborhood? What are the potential uses we could find right now that we could take our time and consider over the long term what to do with this building over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years? If it's used and occupied, it's a lot less offensive to the neighborhood as it stands. And as far as safety is concerned, it may be a little bit more traffic, you know, at odd hours, but it's something we should think about if we're not in a rush to do something on this.
I guess I'll address the low maintenance part, and then I'll give you the other part, because that's not up to me. The reason we have low maintenance is because we are not doing a lot here because the building's not active. Otherwise, we would have high maintenance if this was an active building.
For the tenant.
For the town. Because there's a lot of structural stuff that would need to be done
Or the
to
tenant
use. Huh?
Or the tenant would.
Generally, the leases that we've done on all the town buildings, the structural is responsibility of the town. And there are a lot of structural things here.
You think? Really?
Yes. Yeah, there's the slate roof is an issue. You know? Slate roof, we just did the senior center. The slate roof was $140,000. Okay? So they're not cheap items to do.
Okay.
Steve, you
I think another you did mention in your comments businesses in here. You mentioned businesses. Mr. Revis, we're residential zoned here, correct? This is zoned single residence, so businesses would be an issue in here, and that would be traffic. We've heard a lot of people talk about traffic. So, but I understand what you're saying. You're understanding, and I tell you, for the last 2 years or so, this is our second time back here. We have been considering and mulling over
It sounds
a
like
lot
it
of
gives
these.
us some options. It gives us time to find
Right,
options.
and we've been doing that for the last couple of years.
And there are businesses that are zoning exempt.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John.
Susie Bayer, 15 Aborn again. So at this point, because you want to wrap it up, like what are the reasonable next steps for, and I was just going to ask, is the permanent building committee a committee that might take a look at the options? Because I think understanding what some of the options are and the pros and cons of those, because as the woman asked.
We certainly could do that, have them look at it. We really have no timetable, no plan, other than, you know, we do at some point have to do something in maintenance here, and we can't keep it going. Yeah, so we'll have them give them their opinion.
Okay.
We'll get their opinion as well.
And then they would come forward with some thoughts and proposals.
Yeah, exactly.
And would
exactly.
would that take into consideration the
Yep.
school building situation, which I realize it would be a big investment, but would that look at our land and building situation more holistically?
I didn't hear you. I was writing out.
If the PBC is involved, would it mean that they would be looking at it kind of more holistically?
Well, PBC really looks at, this is like exploding in my hands. PBC really looks at a plan, you know, or a feasibility for an actual thing. Do they do an entire overview? No. But we could, you know, with our town planner and what have you, we can do that and bring them in.
Okay.
But members of the PBC have been through here, more because they were interested than anything else. Okay. Thank you. Again, I'll be here for a while, but thank you for coming out and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Nothing's happening today, so thank you.